Hi, this is Chris. I'm going to take you through some myofascial release exercises. So myofascial release is basically like a regular sports massage, but myofascial release is something you can do yourself, so we just call it self-massage. This is great to do at home when you've got loads of time. I mean, we're all in lockdown at the moment, sort of, so you've got lots of time on your hands. This is something nice and simple you can do. The benefits of it are just like any old massage, but obviously you can do this more often. You can do it every day if you want to, and it's instead of having a massage and then walking around doing some activities, then putting tension back on your body, you can keep up the massage with this and just keep it going every day, and it will relieve tension in certain areas. It's particularly good for sore lower backs, tight hips, things like that, and also getting into your upper body as well. So I'm going to take you through a number of videos. They'll all be about half an hour long, and I'll take you through an MFR routine. It's all fairly simple stuff, but I'll show you with some pictures edited onto the video exactly where the areas are that I want you to hit. There's a couple of rules for doing MFR. The first one is not directly on bones. So right now I'm going to be showing you with a hard ball. So obviously you don't want to be going straight on your bones with this hard ball. But I would recommend that you start with a tennis ball, get comfortable with the positions, because some of them will be pretty painful and sore, and then move on to a hard ball once you're really comfortable about where you're putting it. So no bones. If you hit a nerve, you'll feel it. It'll feel like kind of an electric shock or a fuzz, a bit like hitting your funny bone. Just roll straight off of that, it should be no problem. No pulses, so don't go onto an artery. It will pulse, you'll feel the pulse if you go onto an artery. You often feel that in your femoral artery when you're releasing your hip flexors around here and your inner thigh. Again, it's no problem as long as you just get straight off of it. The other one, you might notice from my legs that I've got some varicose veins going on here. This is just something you're going to have to avoid, so you can't really roll on varicose veins, so don't do that. In general, what you're looking for with each myofascial release point is the soft tissue, and it should be quite painful in some areas. Generally around the hips and upper leg it's quite painful, and then it gets less painful as you go down and less painful as you go up. So you're looking for pain. There's a few different kinds of pain. So you'll have a pain that starts quite strong and gradually subsides. You may get some kind of twitching of the muscle or shaking. That's okay. You might get a dull pain that spreads, maybe down your leg or somewhere else. So that's what you're looking for basically. And that kind of a feeling of melting of the tissue. So it starts off kind of like you're holding a leather strap, and it's kind of stays quite on the surface, and then it gradually kind of melts into the muscle. And so let's get going, and I'll explain some more as we go into the exercises. Okay, so we're going to start in the hip region. Now it's very important to do these exercises in some sort of order. So it's important to start with the hips, and then we'll move into a reasonable order, and then so we're going to start with the hips, go down, and then we're going to go up to the upper body. So we'll start right here on the side. This is called the TFL, the tensor fascia lata. Here, so we're going to start there. So just go on your side. Start off with one leg bent out and one leg straight, and then we're just going to pop that in the gap, and I'll put the picture one side of this screen so you can see exactly where it is. So get it in that precise area. It should be pretty much on the side, but just to the front. So just to the front, just anterior of the of your hip there, and then let it sink in a little bit. Now, if it's really painful, and it may be with some of you, you can just stay here like that. But ideally, we want to get all the way down into a nice, comfortable position, and just try and relax as much as you can. It's really the key to these exercises that you relax, because what we're trying to do is alleviate this tension, and it's no good if you're in these really uncomfortable positions while you're doing it. So you really need to relax. And what I'm going to suggest is about 2 minutes for each position. So 2 minutes each side. So we'll need to do this one on both the right and the left. So just 2 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll do about half an hour's worth in each session here. So I'll show you about half an hour's worth of different positions that you can release. There are lots of them. You can do pretty much every area in your body like this, and with a few different other tools which I'll introduce as we go along. Okay, so you might notice that I'm not moving around very much. So it's just tiny movements. Find a painful bit and then just hold it on it. And then perhaps you can explore around, but millimetre at a time. So I'm really not moving this very much. So it's a good idea to stick, a good way of positioning this particular one is that you find the top of your hip here, and then the top of your femur, kind of that process of your femur here, and it's kind of in that gap that you'll see on the picture as well. So again, just move around slightly, finding the soft tissue and just holding on it, not rolling around like this. Okay, not too much of that. So we're just going to do 2 minutes. Okay, so you can follow my timing or you can set up your own, it's up to you. Now if you're particularly tight on one side, so you might be tighter on one side than the other, you can always do 3 minutes on one side, 1 minute on the other side, or you could spend, sometimes I spend even 10 minutes doing this. My hips have been ruined by squash over the years, so I have to put a lot of effort into releasing my hips like this. So yeah, getting in that position. These hard balls tend to be a bit slippery, tennis balls not so much. So get it in the right position and then just lean on it again. So what exactly is going on here is that when you build up areas of tension, fascia is laid down. It's laid down in those areas, and fascia kind of ends up packing on top of itself and then forming kind of clumps. We know them as knots, and sometimes you might feel that in your neck especially, but they happen in more subtle forms all over your body, and we need to kind of massage out these knots. They're quite subtle and they're also quite painful in many cases. So this should be painful, but you've got to kind of learn to accept the pain and just go with it. I know it's doing you quite a bit of good to do this. So we're just going to do another minute on this side. It's usually, my left side is not usually as bad as my right, and you might find the same thing too. So if you're following this video, keep going with it. I'm just going to explain something important. So the reason I start with the hips, the hip flexors particularly, there are a number of different hip flexors here, is because most people have the same problem, postural problem, and that is that they have tight hip flexors, which usually pulls, if I show you standing up, it pulls their hips out of alignment. So it will make them anteriorly tilt their pelvis like that. You can see there's like a curve in my lower back, or it will do an anterior shift like this. It will pull you forwards, and sometimes you even get both. And so because you can't do this all day, people tend to round in their shoulders to compensate and get the center of gravity lined up in the middle. So the source of many of your problems lie in the hip flexors. And that is, of course, down to the fact that we sit much more than our ancestors used to, but also that we're simply not as active as our ancestors were either. We're not walking, we're not running around all day, and the walking and running provides a kind of optimal stretch for your hip flexors particularly, but also all the other parts of your body as well. So that's why we start with the hips. Anyway, so that was the first one. Let's just stop the watch. The next one we're going to go to is the gluteus medius, which is just a kind of the top of, it's kind of in the same position, but instead of round to the front, we're going just around to the back. So we're going to go kind of just inside the bony processes of your hip and femur here, and it's also going to go round a little bit to the center as well. It's kind of this area here that we're going to do. Again, I'll put that picture up on the screen. So to get in this position, we're going to sit down or lay down with our knees up, pop that in that same position between the sort of kind of the top of the crest of the hip and your femur. So get it in that position and then just roll on it like that. Again, try and lie on your shoulder. Okay, and then we've got this leg which is pointing roughly at 90 degrees, but you can change the angle a little bit here. And this one's straight. Again, if you're feeling this is like extremely painful, and it could be, you'll want to just put your hand down like that to take a bit of pressure off. But if you can get all the way down, that's great. So we're going to go a couple of minutes on there. So sometimes I find that if people have shoulder issues or neck problems, these positions can be quite uncomfortable for them. So I will show you a different position you can use for this one. And also, if this is uncomfortable for your neck here, you can pop a pillow underneath here. Instead of resting on your arm, you can put a pillow underneath here and rest on a pillow. So find your own way, find the way you're most comfortable, because comfort's really important. You should be feeling pain at the area that we're trying to massage, but you should be comfortable while you're doing it. Okay, let's just hold it for another minute on this one. Again, just find a painful spot. That's quite sore for me there, and I don't know, you probably can't see it from the screen, but that was very tight, and then the ball just kind of sunk in. That's kind of what you're looking for. I'm guessing for this one that a lot of you might get some referred pain going down the leg a little bit. That's okay as long as it's not that sharp electric shock feeling. If you ever get that, you've hit a nerve. In my experience, this very rarely happens though. There's a nerve at the back of your calf here, so you might want to be a little bit careful in this area, and also on the inside of your knee. I've had people get it there, but to be honest, it's very, very rare that you hit one. Okay, and then same the other side. Now for the other side, I'll show you just a different option. So if you're very uncomfortable lying on the floor like this, if your neck's hurting or your back's hurting, or it's just too much of a severe pain even with a tennis ball, we can do this on the wall. So bear with me a moment while I adjust things. Okay, so simply done. We can just pop this in the same spot and just lean against the wall with it like that. And it's nice and simple, it's as simple as that. The camera might be on a bit of a wonk here, doesn't look exactly straight. Hope it works out well, but you get the idea. So that's what you can do. Again, time a couple of minutes on that. While I'm timing this other minutes, I'm just going to show you something. Right, so you might notice if you just kind of relax and have a look at your posture, you might notice that one of your feet, or maybe even both, turn out like this. Now this may very well be due to a very overactive gluteus medius here, because in your gait cycle when you run and walk, as you push your foot down and then push off like that, you need to have your hip flexors nicely stretched so that you can be able to do this, so that your glute can function properly and pull this leg back into hip extension and push you off. The problem is if you've got tight hip flexors, which then makes you curve in your lower back, you can't complete this action with your glutes. So the smaller muscle here, the gluteus medius, which is basically trying to adjust your leg this way so you can move in 3 dimensions, or you can stabilize your leg. It's really a stabilizing muscle and helps you move in 3 dimensions. Takes over, so as this leg comes down, you push off, and then it takes over to complete your gait cycle like that and turns your foot out. So if you've got we often call this thing like a duck feet posture, or even if you've just got one out like that, or if it's subtle, you'll probably find this area hurts a bit. Okay, let's go into the next one. So I did mention that we've got more than one hip flexor, so the TFL is just one of them. We're going to go to your hip flexors on the front here. So your quads, one of their main functions is of course leg extension like that. You probably use the leg extension machine and get a nice burn in your quads, but they also flex the hip. Some of these muscles in the quads flex your hip as well, so we need to release those. This one can be a bit sore, but it's also over quite a large area, so we're going to start here, right at the top of the hip, and then work our way down. And I like to kind of zigzag my way down like that, and you'll probably find some painful bits somewhere on the way down. You might have to move this more quickly to an area of pain and then stop on it. So you might feel a lot more pain up here. I tend to get it more up here, but I know a lot of people who I train get it kind of in the middle or even towards the knee. So the position looks like this. So again, pop it at the top of the hip to begin with, and then just put your head on your hands. And again, we're looking for about 2 minutes. You can spend longer if you like on this. So let me just demonstrate. So if you've got more pain in the top of your hip, like I have, just hang out here. Then if you're feeling not really very much here, you can go quite quickly to more the middle of your leg, like that. And I like to lift my leg up, but that might be very painful, so you can always put your leg down. And then to take a bit of pressure off, you can go more up onto your elbows. But note that this is also a bit more of a stressful position for your upper body, and your back is not in quite such a good place. So if you can, try and get down head on hands. And just moving inside very slowly, and then outside very slowly. Zigzagging all the way down the leg. And so you might need to shuffle a little bit like this to get it lower down. If you're doing this at home, it's a good idea to start at the bottom of the mat. So what happens is as you do this, you travel up the mat. So start at the bottom, start at the top, and then you'll eventually end up at the top of the mat there. Oops. Again, like I just showed you, it'll probably slip out every now and then, particularly with this one. And you're just sliding right across the top of the quads and zigzagging down. This will be pretty sore probably. Okay, we'll go to the other side. Again, this leg out will help as well, just take a bit of the pressure off. The more you do that, the more pressure will be on, so you can take some weights off using that leg. So if you do have a sore back, the temptation is, and I think a lot of people make this mistake, is to they'll roll a lot or get a massage where the pain is in their back. Now this might provide some temporary relief, I'm sure it does for most people, but more effective is going to be releasing other areas around the hip, especially. Hip flexors are usually the best for releasing if you've got particularly lower back pain. So I'll briefly explain that. So you continue doing that. Like I said, we've got a lot of people have got these tight hip flexors that pulls you back into this, what we call a lordosis. So if we relieve the tension of your hip flexors, we relieve the tension on your lower back. So that's why releasing the hip flexors is a really good idea. Let's do a couple more in this session. So we're going to do the ITB, and this is probably the most painful area. This is going to be very, very uncomfortable, so I apologise in advance for this. If you've got a softer ball, like a racket ball, you may even need to go to that, because a tennis ball is going to be super harsh. Now, I have said that you can do these exercises every day, or these massage areas every day. This is the one that I would just be a little bit more careful with, because you'll likely be a bit stiff after this one. This is going to be stiff. Maybe you'll have kind of a dead leg feeling, maybe a day and a half after. So if you've got that feeling, just don't roll it that day. You might want to leave it a day or two and roll it again. So the first one is going to be just anterior to the ITB. So the ITB is a big band of fascia that connects kind of your knee and your hip here. And it kind of sticks to the side of your leg. So this is a really important area to release because it's super, super tight in most people. And we're going to go just to the anterior, which means to the front. Anterior to the front, posterior to the back. So we're just going to go anterior like that to about there. Now the reason this tends to be very sore in people is that with the problems in people's posture, so if they're rounded here and they've got the lower back problem here, it makes it very difficult to bring your feet forward and back and your legs forward and back, hip width apart. So it's very difficult to do that. And so to compensate, they will walk kind of on a line like this, and I'm over exaggerating it at the moment, but walking on a line has a bit of a problem in the fact that you can't rotate where you should do, which is in your upper body. Your legs want to be going nice and straight, but your upper body wants to rotate like this. So when you can't rotate properly, if you're rounded in your shoulders, you'll rotate elsewhere, which will be around your hips and lower back. That's not so good, and when you do it, when you walk, you'll pop out like this. So as I put my foot down, hips pop out, and you get all this pressure builds up on this part of your leg, and this is why this is super painful. So give it a go. Apologies in advance. So we're basically in the same position as the TFL, but this time it's below that head of the femur, and again just to the front. So I'll pop it under there, exactly the same position as before, and then we're just going to, if you can, pop the leg in the air like that and just rest on your arm. Now you may not be able to get your leg in the air like this to begin with, because this is going to be super sore. So you might have to just put it on the ground like that and just go on your elbows. Now this is where I lose most people with the MFR, because this is like just super horrible. But if you stick with it, as you can see, I'm not really in that much pain, but I can tell you now that my pain in this area was pretty bad, but it does go away. And this is one of these areas that a lot of people find if they release, they find that some chronic pain that they've been having that's built up just starts to kind of weirdly disappear, and it's not even, doesn't seem like it's even related to this area. But everything's connected. So what you're essentially doing when you have a massage is, as I've mentioned with all this fascia, you're breaking up these adhesions, these knots. And this is really important for your movement and your posture, because this fascia is joining your muscles together, and it's joining them in chains where they work together to produce the full body movements that are very typical with natural human movement. So a lot of the movements that we might say we might do in the gym, for example, are quite isolated. So we might do some bicep curls that are quite isolated to the biceps. That's really not how we've evolved to move. We've evolved to move in a way that is full body, utilising almost all the muscles in the body to produce a movement. So think about throwing a punch or throwing a ball. It starts from the ground up. Yeah, it starts from your feet, and then you pivot, you move your hips, and then the hips work into the upper body, and you rotate from the upper body. And so all these muscle movements are joined together by this fascia. So you might find that if you release fascia in certain areas, you'll find an effect somewhere else. That's quite common. I'm hoping all this talking is putting you off the pain. You may feel some considerable shaking with this one. Just do your best to get through it. And in about 2 minutes, I'm going to the other side. Again, you'll probably find that one side is worse than the other. Just roll onto it. There. Just try and relax. I know it's really, really difficult, particularly with this one. Just try and relax. Now what you'll find is probably the younger you are, or the better posture that you have, the less pain that you will feel in many of these exercises. The older you are, the more of that fascia that you've got packed together, it's all dehydrated and it's not so flexible and slippery anymore. I'll have to put a picture of the fascia up in one of these videos as well. Maybe I'll put it up there somewhere. So young people may not feel these so badly. I know I've trained a few teenagers and I get them to do this and they're not really feeling it, believe it or not. But even teenagers have got some painful areas that need to be massaged out. So again, you see I'm moving a little bit. I don't feel so much pain in this area anymore, so I'm moving quite quickly, sort of down and a little bit side to side, but you might need to only focus on one area and just move it really. I'm sure you'll find the pain nice and easily for this one, so you don't need to move it very much. Okay, let's do one more. So if we've just gone the front to the side, so we've done the ITB just to the front, we're going to do the ITB just to the back now. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. So kind of the textbook way is this way. So we're going to have one knee pointing out to the side, one knee pointing directly forwards, and then you're going to stick it just behind the ITB this time, so not directly on the side, just a little behind, so just posterior to the ITB, and then just let it sink in. And if again, this will probably be very painful, not so bad usually as the anterior side of the ITB. So just lean on that like this. Now this was a position that I found that I was just very uncomfortable. I never really got a great release from this position, just simply because my hips were so tight. Now it's not really a problem anymore because I release my hips so much they don't feel anywhere near as tight, and this doesn't feel an uncomfortable position for me to be in. But if it's uncomfortable for you, I'll show you the other version of this on the other leg. It's just the same thing, so just lean on it. Obviously the more you push down, the more painful it's going to be. This time you might need to just adjust it with your hands, so just pick up the ball and place it in a new position. Again, you can work this all the way down from just underneath the femur at the top here to just before the knee, so maybe a centimetre or two before the knee. Okay, and then we do your 2 minutes again. Just trying to be super relaxed. And we'll do the different one on the other side. So for the other side, this is a little bit of a tricky position, but it's probably easier if you've got tight hips. So what we're going to do is kind of roughly what we did before, but this time we're going just behind. So stick it in that area just below the head of the femur, just behind, posterior to the ITB, in the same position. This time you're going to throw this leg over, and if you notice my toes, instead of pointing kind of 45 degrees down, they're now pointing 45 degrees up. And so we're hitting the back of that now, as you can tell by my face, that's quite painful. And I find generally that this is still a better release for me, but it is a bit of an unusual position, but you can fiddle about as you like. Now these positions are quite severe, even with a tennis ball. You might just shuffle a bit. So again, I'll show you something that you can do on the wall to make this a little bit easier. But again, play around with the positions a little bit and find your most comfortable position. Once you get into doing this and you've kind of got past that excruciating pain and you can deal with it, it's actually a very relaxing thing to do. So if you can't cope with the pain from this position, there are some easier ways to do it. So we're going to use the wall again, so let me just show you that. Okay, so pretty much like the gluteus medius release, it's kind of exactly the same thing. So you can do this both for the anterior ITB and the posterior one. So obviously if we're going to do the anterior one, we're going to be more facing the wall like this, and then you're just pushing into it like that. This is much easier, so you can even use a hard ball on this one, but you'll still get a nice release depending on how much you push in. It's obviously ultimately a little less relaxing because you're having to push rather than just lay on it, but this is a good place to start. Then we go to the back, and obviously that's going to look more like that, so you're just kind of leaning into it that way. So that's the first part. It's the first session where we've done most of the top of the hip here and the legs and the upper legs. There are still some more hip flexors to go, but we're going to go to our second session next time. So I hope you enjoy, maybe the wrong word, but I hope you didn't find this too painful. And if you do this, you can do this about every other day, again for about half an hour, or eventually maybe even an hour. You'll see great benefits, and it's something that you can practice right now, particularly if you've got lots of time on your hands because of this damn virus, and you probably will see the benefits in that time. And who knows, you might actually quite enjoy it after a while. I'll see you next time anyway.